In the legal world, there is a combination of forces that feed a corrupt and suffocating legal system for attorneys. Law schools, law professionals, judges, and even the firms themselves for whom you work create a system, a matrix, if you will, that is nothing like what you thought when you passed the bar exam. The purpose of this podcast is to help you escape this legal matrix, leading you out of the proverbial desert to be free of the bondage of the matrix. Hosted by Bryce D. Nyer, attorney at law with over 30 years experience in the trenches of civil and criminal litigation at the state, federal, and international levels. He's a highly accomplished and resourceful legal professional, a true master of his craft, and he's here to help you get your life back. Here's your host, Bryce D. Nyer.
All right. This is Bryce D. Nyer coming to you live from Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of Fort Bragg, where every day men and women don the uniform and do what? Wage war. So anyway, I'm a little bit under the weather today, and our mascot is roaming the law firm somewhere here, probably trying to snatch up food from one of my staff. So he's out and about, but we are here live from my office. So we're going to hopefully hope the phones don't ring and we won't get other distractions. But hey, we got a great topic today, and this is what we're going to discuss. We're going to discuss this topic of trust. So it's a big deal, isn't it? So who can you trust? What can you trust? Can you even trust yourself? It's an issue that I feel compelled to talk about because pretty much I feel compelled to talk about just about anything. But come on, let's be realistic here. Anything that you do, whether it's dating, it's your marriage, it's your business, no matter what it is, you're going to have this issue of trust. Can you trust the people, the persons with whom you associate in your personal and professional lives? And I've come to find that here's the reality. And I hate to say this, but you can trust very, very few in your life. Very few. Because if you're expecting the human race and humans to always do the right thing, you're going to be sadly disappointed all of your life, because human beings have their own agendas, their own desires, their own wishes, and sometimes they are completely, absolutely selfish. They're not selfless, they're selfish, and they put their own desires above anything else. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be focused on what your impossible game in life is, the targets that you need to meet in order to accomplish and meet, this impossible game and these domains of body, being, balance, and business. What I am saying is that when people have an ulterior motive, when it becomes their purpose in life to rise above everybody at the detriment, and using trust as the vehicle to accomplish what they want, which then breaches the very faith or trust you may have in them, that's when it then becomes a problem. And I will tell you, young lawyers, and I will tell you, law students, that as you go through this legal matrix, the so-called legal profession, you really can't trust anybody. Because the minute you put 100% trust in somebody or something, you're going to fail to follow up. You're going to fail to pay attention to detail. And at that point in time, somebody or some entity or some agency is going to exploit your vulnerability, and they're going to exploit your weakness that you may have for the moment, whether it's a long moment or it's a short moment. This has come home to roost with me many times in my career and in my personal life. And I would be remiss if I said that I had not broken trust with people in my life, because I have. And I had put my selfish desires in front of what should have been done or what should have been said. And that's human nature. The problem becomes when you fail to realize and you fail to discover that what you're doing or failing to do, or what you're saying or failing to say, is directly proportional to you being just a selfish ass. And then it causes harm to other people. That's when it really becomes the problem. That's when you have to really look inward and ask yourself that better question. Am I breaching somebody's trust? Am I taking advantage of a particular situation because I have inside information about this person, this company, this agency? There's nothing more hurtful, there's nothing more painful than someone, or some organization breaching the very trust that you place in them. And I will venture to say that everybody out there listening to this has broken trust with somebody or some company or some agency somewhere along your life. Then it begs the next better question. What is the corrective action that you have to take to fix the problem? And the reality is, when most people lie, when they do something, they just don't want to get caught. And they don't want to go make it right, because to make it right means they have to admit that they did something wrong. And when they admit that they did something wrong, that is very painful. Nobody likes to admit that they're wrong. Nobody likes to admit that they're accountable and responsible for something that didn't go right or a problem that they caused. And this has become the crux of the problems in the world, is that people are failing miserably. They're failing miserably to be accountable for what they do or they fail to do. And excuse me, like I said, I'm having a problem with this cold, this weather right now. And luckily I have my hot tea. I love my hot tea. But this subject of trust, it's a serious thing, because every organization, every company, every relationship that you have, there has to be some level of trust. Back in the 80s, when Ronald Reagan was president, he made a very good point when he discussed about the relationship with the former Soviet Union. And during that time, he made the statement, basically, trust but verify. And those simple words and that simple statement, I think, resonated with millions, if not billions, around the world, because you have to continually follow up. And a lot of times you even have to follow up on yourself. There are many days and many weeks and months and years that have gone by during my tenure as a litigation attorney that I have had my work reviewed, or before I said or wrote something, I had somebody review it. And the reason I had them review it is because at times I didn't trust myself to say the right thing, or perhaps I was so tired when I was preparing work that it's easy to make a mistake. And routinely here at my law firm, I have my staff go through fresh and read work that I've typed or, and prepared, so that, because if they've never seen it, it's easier to spot the mistakes when they read it for the first time. In fact, even this morning, I had one of my staff go through a particular legal document that I had prepared, and she found some typos or grammar or spelling or inverted the part, something, to where when she read it for the first time, it just jumped out at her, and she was able to quickly go in and make the corrections. Because I've always been of the belief in this issue of trust that 2 and 3 sets of eyes are better than one. When you have people that are looking at what you're doing, looking at the work that you're producing, or the product, or whatever, the product or the service, that you have that quality control. Because look, you're going to get tired. You're going to get burned out. And when that happens, you make mistakes. And so when we're talking about this topic of trust, it's not just about trusting other people. It's about trusting yourself. And another example is in life, and then this legal matrix, if you put yourself in situations to where your trust becomes vulnerable, then you have to remove yourself from the situation. For example, in the legal profession, many lawyers go to these conventions, these meetings, all over the place, all over the country, internationally. And so, for example, let's just get right to it. Let's be honest. People, that are married and go to these things, having problems in their marriage, and then they're away at these conventions and these meetings. They have a few drinks. They shouldn't. Then it starts to chit chat, and the next thing you know, they're romping and stomping in the old hotel room, and trust has been broken in a marriage. Trust has been broken in the firm for which they work, what they represent. So if you get into a situation that you feel that you cannot trust yourself where you are, then you have to remove yourself from that situation. And it takes a very strong, determined person and a focused person to admit that, hey, I'm in this situation, I'm in this relationship where I can't even trust myself to do the right thing. That's your internal warning system. That is God's conviction in you, warning you to walk away. And I see it more and more every day when I go to court, especially when we deal in our law firm with family court cases. The reality is that most marriages fail, for many different reasons. But the biggest thing is the trust is the common denominator, and the trust just evaporates. People get tired of each other. They cheat on each other. They become selfish. And the trust that they once placed in one another has diminished. It's gone away. It's just gone. It's evaporated. And it's funny because sometimes we trust others, friends or colleagues, more so than we trust even our spouses or our fiancés or our girlfriends or our boyfriends or even some of our family members that we've known since birth or that we've been married to or dating for months or years. And it just amazes me, this thing. We look at our own government and governments across the world. I have never seen such a breach of trust in my life than I have with our own government in the United States and governments across the world. This was no more evident and clear than during the COVID fiasco, when governments and pharmaceuticals and these so-called experts pontificated their insanity and their delusion and their deception for the almighty dollar or the fame and the publicity and power, only to be discovered years later that they lied and they breached the trust of people around the world. And some of it came with consequences where people's businesses, their lives were ruined, and where people even lost their lives. So this issue of trust is critical to everything that you do, to every person with whom you interact. And there's going to come a time when you're going to have to stand up and you're going to have to take that deep look in the mirror. And you're going to have to say, can I trust the people? Can I trust the organization? But most of all, can I trust myself? It's a deep subject, but it's something that's been on my mind for a long time, and especially in the last couple of weeks, as people that I have done business with for years, or people that I know for years, have breached trust. And it is a topic that you need to discuss, because at the end of the day, it's just like, when I was in the military, you have to have some trust that the person next to you is going to rise to the occasion and has your back covered. It's covering what we call covering your six, because life and death depend upon you and those with whom you place the trust, but no more so than in yourself. All right, this has been Bryce Nair. Again, another episode of Escape the Legal Matrix, here live from the office here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of Fort Bragg, where every day, men and women go out there and wage war against the very enemies that seek to take the freedoms that we so often take for granted. And you know what? When they're out there on the battlefield, they have to trust that we back here have their back. This is Bryce out.